So who is behind this? And so there are a bunch of questions that are going to be asked here. The security failures are going to occupy Israelis for decades. The level of failure here is unthinkable and unimaginable, and people on the ground, I'm talking to them every minute pretty much, are stunned by it, as well they should be. But this was a very sophisticated attack. This is not a baseline attack in East Jerusalem by a Palestinian Arab with a knife. This was a highly sophisticated attack with hundreds of fighters breaching walls using highly sophisticated military weaponry. According to the Wall Street Journal, it's coming directly from Iran. Quote, Iranian security officials helped plan Hamas's Saturday surprise attack on Israel and gave the green light for the assault at a meeting in Beirut last Monday, according to senior members of Hamas and Hezbollah, another Iran-backed militant group. So they're deliberately saying that it was them. And the senior members of Hamas and Hezbollah, who are pointing the finger at Iran, officers of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, had worked with Hamas since August to devise the air, land, and sea incursions, the most significant breach of Israel's border since the 73 Yom Kippur War. Details of the operation were refined during several meetings in Beirut. Remember, Beirut is it's Lebanon, and it's an Iranian proxy state, attended by IRGC officers and representatives of 4 Iran-backed militant groups, including Hamas, which holds power in Gaza, and Hezbollah, a Shiite militant group and political faction in Lebanon. Meanwhile, the U.S., because this administration is dominated by cowards, they're pretending none of this is happening. They are the ones, of course, who signed billions of dollars over in funding to the Iranians. They're pretending money isn't fungible. Don't worry, it's not going to go for terrorism. But that's not how money works. If I sign you a check and I say you can't use it for drugs, but I know you're a drug user, I sign you a check and I say it's going to pay for your food. What do you think you're going to do with the money you were going to use for the food? You now use it to buy drugs. The same thing is true here. Money is fungible. The United States has granted billions of dollars to Iran, access to billions of dollars. Not only that, America has been negotiating with Iran over a nuclear program. Well, their own negotiating team, led by Robert Malley, was infiltrated by Iranian agents, well documented. So U.S. officials have a stake in pretending Iran had nothing to do with this. A U.S. official said, we don't have any information at this time to corroborate this account. And Secretary of State Antony Blinken denied it. He said, we have not yet seen evidence Iran directed or was behind this particular attack, but there's certainly a long relationship. Asked about the meetings, Mahmoud Mirdawi, a senior Hamas official, said the group planned the attack on its own, which of course is a lie. A spokesman for Iran's mission to the UN said Iran was in support of Gaza's actions, but didn't direct them. They said they're fiercely autonomous, which is, again, a lie. The reason they're attempting to pretend that it was just Hamas is because if you're going to try to dissuade Saudi from making peace with Israel, you pretend it was Hamas alone. If Iran was behind it, Saudi hates Iran as much as the Israelis do. And so it actually exacerbates the chances of a peace with Israel. Meanwhile, Joe Biden, the president of the United States, spoke out yesterday. Here is what he had to say about the situation.
The people of Israel are under attack, orchestrated by a terrorist organization, Hamas. In this moment of tragedy, I want to say to them and to the world and to terrorists everywhere that the United States stands with Israel. We will not ever fail to have their back. We'll make sure that they have the help their citizens need and they can continue to defend themselves. You know, the world's seen appalling images. Thousands of rockets in the space of hours raining down on Israeli cities. When I got up this morning and started this at 7:30, 8 o'clock, my calls. Hamas terrorists crossing in Israel, killing not only Israeli soldiers, but Israeli civilians. In the street, in their homes. Innocent people murdered, wounded. Entire families taken hostage by Hamas. Just days after Israel marked the holiest of days in the Jewish calendar. It's unconscionable.
Okay, well, Joe Biden better keep the support coming because he has an unfortunate history of being pusillanimous about all of this. Meanwhile, the same day, he made sure that he held a barbecue, apparently, according to the Pool report from the White House. 6 p.m. Sunday evening, a reporter said that they could hear a live band in the White House. And when they asked about it, the White House said that the president and first lady were hosting a barbecue for the White House executive resident staff and their family. Meanwhile, Antony Blinken, he's sending mixed messages. He says, correctly, that Hamas brings only death and destruction. But as we'll see, he then admits that Iran funds terrorism and calls on Israel for restraint.
There are basically two paths that are before the region right now. One is the path of normalization, of integration, of people working together. And by the way, in that and on that path, it's not a substitute for resolving the differences between Israelis and Palestinians. On the contrary, it needs to be used to advance that effort as well. But that's one path. The other path is what we've seen from Hamas. Terrorism, horror, and something that offers not only nothing to people throughout the region, it offers nothing to the Palestinians. On the contrary, everything that Hamas does makes their situation, their plight, even worse. They bring nothing but death and destruction, not only to Israelis, but to Palestinians.
Of course, that is absolutely true, but that doesn't answer the question as to why the Biden administration reinstated support for the Palestinian Authority. They suggest that they have not provided any support to Hamas, but in their own documentation, they admit that shipping so-called humanitarian aid into Gaza was probably being used for this sort of stuff. Quote, due to its overall strength and the level of control over Gaza, we assess there's a high risk Hamas could potentially derive indirect, unintentional benefit from U.S. assistance to Gaza. There is less, but still some U.S. risk. U.S. assistance would benefit other designated groups as well. That's according to internal United States documents. Did not stop the Biden administration from shipping millions of dollars into the Gaza Strip. Antony Blinken has admitted that Iran funds terrorism. They've shipped billions of dollars into Iran, or at least unfrozen billions of dollars flowing into Iran. Here is Blinken.
The argument that money is fungible. So Iran may have known this money is coming and used other funds to help fund this attack that happened.
Iran has unfortunately always used and focused its funds on supporting terrorism, on supporting groups like Hamas. And it's done that when there have been sanctions. It's done that when there haven't been sanctions. And it's always prioritized that.
So why exactly would we unfreeze money to them? The United States, that is. Why? Explain. The answer is there is no explanation. It's these pseudo-sophisticate dolts who believe that you can negotiate with evil and give them money. And somehow this is going to make things all better. By the way, Secretary of State Blinken actually committed a heinous, ridiculous moral atrocity when he tweeted out yesterday, quote, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, who, by the way, is a terrorist sympathizer, and I spoke further on Hamas's terrorist attacks on Israel. I encouraged Turkey's advocacy for a ceasefire and the release of all hostages held by Hamas immediately. A ceasefire? A ceasefire? You told that to the terror-supporting foreign minister of Turkey, did you? Antony Blinken then deleted that. So things are going really well over there for the Biden administration. Speaking of which, the U.S. Office of Palestinian Affairs tweeted out, quote, we unequivocally condemn the attack of Hamas terrorists and the loss of life that has occurred. We urge all sides to refrain from violence and retaliatory attacks. Terror and violence solve nothing. That was pulled down after it became perfectly obvious that when you tell Israel not to defend itself, that is, in fact, an act of evil. Meanwhile, Blinken called on Israel to avoid civilian casualties. He should be calling on Hamas to avoid civilian casualties since they are the ones who literally maximize civilian casualties for the cameras.
If this is a prolonged attack, what kind of humanitarian crisis are you expecting here and impact on civilians?
Well, we've seen this, unfortunately, repeat itself, although the magnitude, the scale of what Hamas did here is something we haven't seen before. But in prior instances, those who have suffered along with the victims of terrorism are civilians, including in Gaza. And whatever Israel does in Gaza, as always, we look to it to do everything possible to avoid civilian casualties, something, of course, that Hamas doesn't do. On the contrary, not only does it not seek to avoid them, it deliberately targets civilians.
Okay, well, then you might stop telling Israel to stop avoiding civilian casualties, because what you're actually doing is putting the onus on Israel to put its own citizens in harm's way to defend civilians that Hamas is putting in harm's way. No country worth its salt would put itself in that position. Not on its own borders, not after the murder of 800 of its citizens and the kidnapping of hundreds of others. So I'm getting a lot of questions over the past 24 hours about what people can do. So I'm going to refer you in the description below to some of the websites. But for those who are listening, Friends of the IDF is providing, people need Kevlar. They need helmets. They're short of basic supplies. Friends of the IDF helps provide resources. So here are 5 ways you can help. Friends of the IDF, FIDF.org. Magen David Edom is Red Cross in Israel. They need armored ambulances because the Hamas terrorists, Islamic Jihad, all these terrorist groups, they shoot in ambulances because this is what they do. Again, world's most evil people. Go to AFMDA.org. That's AFMDA.org. You should check out IsraelRescue.org, which is United Hatzalah. Again, they are an emergency medical response service. You can help dedicate emergency medical response vehicles that can get places very, very quickly. They have good emergency response time and they need your help. Again, that's IsraelRescue.org. Our friends over at the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews are doing good work as well. You should check out IFCJ.org. And some of my friends run the so-called Ari Fold Foundation. Ari Fold was a Jew who was murdered for the crime of being a Jew. He was defending other people and he stopped a terrorist but died in the attempt. Arifold.org is providing all sorts of resources to soldiers who are about to go into battle. I'm a Jew. Those aren't just the words of martyrs. They're the words of heroes. They're the words of Moses in front of Pharaoh and Jonah on the boat and Esther in front of Ahasuerus. They're the words of the Maccabees, and they are the words of the soldiers currently serving in Gaza, protecting their families and protecting their children and protecting their land. I am a Jew. Let me tell you what those words mean. They mean I'm a child of the people of the book, the people who brought the world Moses' message of freedom and Jeremiah's message of justice and Isaiah's message of hope, the people who represent the root of the values of the West, the people who preserve the tradition thousands of years old stretching back to Sinai, the people of the Ten Commandments and the splitting of the Red Sea, of the Holy Temple, and of Abraham's one God. I'm a Jew. I'm a member of a people who will not be victimized again. Israel's called up 300,000 reservists. People are volunteering in mass numbers. Flights into Israel are packed. Flights out are largely empty. 150% of volunteer numbers have been hit. Now I want to read you some text from people I know, brothers, sisters, friends in Israel. This from a member of my security detail in Israel, who we just left a couple of days ago. He's been called up. He's 25 years old. Quote, on my way to join my brothers in combat. And this from a close friend, a doctor from the United States, who has responded to Israel's call urgently for doctors. Quote, I couldn't sit in Florida knowing what's happening. And this from a soldier in Gaza. Quote, today our hearts beat with fear. Who among us is going to die? And who will return safe and sound? We are your messengers in battle. We fight so that you can live in peace with your children, so you can stay alive. We are your protection. Will you be one of us? We go on this dangerous mission knowing that some of us will not return, but will ascend to our next position in a storm to heaven as Eliyahu the prophet did. We go there with devotion and dedication. We ask you to be our protection through your prayers. Protect us by going beyond yourselves through spirituality and good deeds. Pray for us. Pray that you will not see another mother bury her son. Pray that you will not see our women as widows raising our children in tears. Pray that our children will grow up knowing who their fathers are. Pray that we eliminate the terrorists who aim to destroy us and that we do not harm innocent women and children. Please, we implore you, as you read this, don't just move on to the next thing you do. Say a chapter of Psalms. Awaken King David to ask the Almighty for full redemption and peace for the whole world. Take upon yourself another good deed. And please pass this on. I'm sure your prayer will make a difference. Remember, we are in this together. We are on the front lines with weapons, and you fight with us in your prayers. Every word of your prayer gives us strength, protection, and success. Every year, we Jews read on Passover in the Haggadah, which is the retelling of the Exodus from Egypt, the following words: V'hi she'amda la'avosenu v'lanu shelo echad bilvad amad aleinu l'chalosenu ela shebechol dor v'dor omdim aleinu l'chalosenu v'hakadosh baruch hu matzilenu miyadam. And it is this, the Torah, Judaism, that has stood by our ancestors and by us. For not only one enemy has risen up against us to destroy us, but in every generation they rise up to destroy us. But the Holy One, blessed be He, delivers us from their hands. And we read in Psalms 121, Hinei lo yanum v'lo yishan shomer Yisrael. Behold, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. There's a famous song that we sing in our synagogues, at a lot of our events. And it says, our brothers, the whole house of Israel, who are in distress and captivity, whether over sea or on land, may the Omnipresent have mercy on them and remove them from distress to relief and from darkness to light and from subjugation to redemption, now speedily and close at hand. And here is that song. Acheinu kol beis Yisrael, Acheinu kol beis Yisrael, Hanasunim betzara, betzara uvashivya, Haomdim ben bayam uven bayabasha. Hamakom yerachem, yerachem alehem, v'yotziem mitzara, lirvacha, u'ma'afa leora, u'mishibu ligeula hashta, bagala uvizman kariv. I'm going to finish with one more thing that we say and that everyone should remember. The people of Israel lives. Our Father in heaven lives. Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai. Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai. Od Avinu, Od Avinu, Od Avinu 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 Chai. God bless you. God bless the United States. God bless the state of Israel and all the people who are going to go into harm's way to protect innocent lives. And may God avenge the blood of the innocent.